Hey y'all, another awesome guest today, Austin Krell from the Painted Lines, also from the Philadelphia area. Austin, for the people who are just listening and can't see the ticker at the bottom where I have some information about you, tell the people about who you are and all the stuff that you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I am a beat writer covering the Sixers for the Painted Lines, as you said. I also cover the general NBA for USA Today for their various Wires websites that they have. So that's kind of what I do. I am drunk on basketball.
It's always super cool, like at this point of the year, the way that they've worked out. I think the NFL season move into 17 games, 18 weeks. It really kind of helps with the lulls between sports fandom, because it really feels like the NBA season kicks off right around now, the All-Star game. Obviously, you're somebody who does it day to day. You're talking to the guys, and that's awesome. But for the general fan, people really start paying attention now, just like they do for March Madness and college basketball. Let's get right into it. So why do you think that the Nets right now are seeing James Harden as expendable?
I don't think it's so much as like they see him as expendable. I think it's more along the lines of they're coming to a sense and a reality, and they're sort of, I guess, they're making peace with it that, look, we don't think this guy is staying here long term. Everything that I've heard and understand says that he wants out, and I think part of it is he feels like he sacrificed to come to Brooklyn, to play with Kyrie and Kevin Durant. He wanted to sacrifice to play the style that team wanted to play for the sake of championship, and now you have one guy who is playing half the games because he refuses to get vaccinated. And you have some other play style things there. I think he likes to play a little bit of a slower pace in the half court, whereas they kind of want to get out and run with younger guys. And it's definitely showed up in his play. Like he has not had a good year by any stretch. Well, he's had a very good year. He hasn't had a
James Harden. He hasn't had a great.
He has not had a James Harden good year. And so I think those are all things that are at play. I think he looks across the way and sees the Sixers, who are without their second best player, who are in a equal, if not better, spot right now in the East than his current team is, and he sees his old GM and Tad Brown, the old CEO of the Rockets, and he feels like this is a good opportunity to play my style because they play a more half court pace with Joel Embiid. And he can be a little bit more ball dominant on the perimeter. I also think that they recognize, like, hey, he wants the 5-year supermax. We're not sure if we want to give this version of James Harden a 5-year supermax contract. So
that's the going rate, though. That I think that any team that would acquire him, that what are you acquiring him for? Unless you really are sure that he puts you have to be a team that is definitely going to contend this year, but. I mean, you got Tobias Harris. I was looking at the contracts. Tobias makes the most on the Sixers.
Fortunately, yes.
So you probably have to make dollars and cents make sense here. If you're going to do this, somehow you have to probably either the team that maybe the Nets would get Toby and Simmons, but you have to figure out somebody who wants to take that contract, I would think.
So I think the way that the pressure works would be like if the Sixers say, you know what, fine, Nets, if you want to play hardball, we can trade Tobias, and then we can move Ben elsewhere or whatever, and sign him outright this summer, and then you lose him for nothing. So I think that's a factor that has to loom on the Nets' heads in terms of like getting both Ben and Tobias. I think that would be
the Nets wouldn't get them. No.
Oh yeah, no, that would be a high.
Get a third team in. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if the Nets okay a trade where they take on 2 max contracts for James Harden and one of them is an albatross contract, that would be someone would be looking for a new job. I think.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, you make a good point. It is the going rate for a superstar. I would also say that that's probably harder to justify when you're meeting with ownership, and they're like, "Well, why do we do this 3 years from now? Why do we give this guy who's averaging 16 points a game for us $55 million?" So those are things that are easy in the moment to do, and then you don't know how to answer for them long term. So I think given the way he's played, I could see why they wouldn't want to do it. I could also, see why the Sixers would be more inclined to do it, because maybe you think, okay, and people he's more comfortable with in Daryl Morey and Tad Brown, and also a system that he's more accustomed to, and maybe he plays better. And then suddenly it's like, okay, well, this isn't just him going through natural decline, rather it's a guy that was in a.
He's got a good case to make. I think if I'm James Harden and I'm playing devil's advocate for James Harden, obviously right now, I would say, obviously we've had growing pains. I've got to play behind Kevin Durant, who nobody. I mean, I think I'm a great player, but nobody thinks I'm better than Kevin Durant. And honestly, I'm not better than Kevin Durant. I've got to give up some amount of shots and the go-to kind of aspect of the game. So the 22 per game, I think there's an easy case to be made that 22 per game easily, once he comes to any pretty much new team that doesn't have a Kevin Durant, is going to rise back up into that 25 range. And he's 10 assists. He's always shot well from the free throw line. I mean, do you think that this puts the Sixers over the top should it happen, or what?
I don't know. So bear with me here. So I told this said this in a group chat last night. The four things that I think are just going to kill them, in terms of in terms of playoffs. The four things that I see that are just going to crush them. One is going to be, when teams go guard or guard wing pick and roll, they're trying to get Tyrese Maxey on them because he's a smaller defender. Bigger guys can shoot over the top of him. The Grizzlies did that. The Wizards did that. That's the thing that's going to be a problem. Harden didn't solve that. He's not a defensive ace, right?
No.
And he's not about to be either. He wasn't for the first 10 years.
No.
Not about to be.
No.
Another thing is going to be when teams set off-ball screens because they're trying to get Seth Curry to fight through screens. He doesn't really do a ton of that. He's not strong enough to fight through those screens. James Harden isn't going to do that either. So that's a problem. 3 is zone offense. He helps with that. James Harden, I think I looked this up last night. He's only played 13 possessions of zone offense this year, and I think he's averaging over 1.2 points per possession, which is good, very good. But that's not a big sample size. So that you're kind of you're not sure. The fourth thing is rebounding, right? Rebounding is horrible. They can't rebound to save their lives. I don't know about that either. So he helps make your offensive life a little bit more cohesive and fluent. I don't know that he's going to fix all of the holes on this team, if that makes sense.
No, I don't think so either. I just think that on any given night that Joel Embiid could be the best player on the court. And I think a lot of times in basketball, more than other sports, that kind of takes over. For roster construction purposes, I actually think that it'd be better for the Sixers to get off of Maxey if you have to than Thibault, because for exactly what you were saying, the defensive end of things, there's really nobody who's going to try to stop anybody there. I mean, James Harden had one postseason, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, and he really shed some weight and was, he had that really nice block on the sideline out of bounds to end a game. That was his defensive peak. And so generally, no, James Harden's not a stopper.
No. And I mean, speaking of stoppers, he's also a ball stopper, right? I mean, he's a guy that you get the ball to, and you're ostensibly stopping the ball because he's going to ISO a lot. I don't know that they have great off-ball movement as a team, which if you're not like pulling your defenders away and you're not making them move and work and they're just able to sit there and sag off, your isolation isn't really going to be that great anyway. Um, and that's a problem. I also think like with Joel, do you want, an ISO dominant guy next to Joel? It's going to take some of the pressure off Joel's shoulders to play great every night, but it's also going to mean that there's not a constant stream of touches going to Joel, which maybe he's okay with that, but maybe he also has a hard time getting off the schneid to start games if he's not getting consistent touches. So I think those are all things to consider. Like this is going to hurt to say, this is going to hurt, fans to say, but like kind of like a better fit in a lot of ways was Jimmy Butler because
Yes.
he was a guy that didn't it was more has transformed into more of a playmaker.
Yes.
He's not really a shooter anymore, which would have hurt the team, but he's a guy that can get you clutch buckets. And that wouldn't jeopardize Joel's touches. Same thing if you got like Klay Thompson. Same thing if you got like Bradley Beal to a lesser extent, but it's not a guy that can play a little bit off ball. Harden, I don't know, is that comfortable off the ball. So I think
Obviously not. That's
yeah.
why he wants to go.
Right.
Obviously. Yeah. So you still think that they're about like a second round team with Harden?
No, I would put them in the conference finals. I mean,
Okay.
I think they can get over a hump. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they won a title. I just think that I don't think that he's a guy that's going to come in here and fix all of their holes. And that isn't to say that like they're doomed, but I mean, every team that wins a title has a flaw in some aspect. I just think it's a matter of like, do they have enough offense to mitigate their other holes on defense, which is a golden question, and that's a question I think they have to ponder. I think that the thing that we're going to be watching for the next couple of days is the jockeying for the support compensation behind Ben Simmons. Like, are they going to include Thibault? Are they going to include Tyrese Maxey? Is it this guy or is it that guy? My understanding is that they had a meeting with Joel, and Joel said, "Don't trade Maxey." That's my understanding.
It's the leader we need. That's our guy.
Yeah. Joel is one of a kind. That's for sure.
That's awesome. That's so. Do you think? Okay, let's say the Sixers don't do anything. They stay pat. They stand pat. They say, you know what, maybe they have the same point of view as a lot of people and say, how far does a Harden take us? Maybe we just stand pat and hope for the best with Ben Simmons and try to mend the relationship. If we're in the same place in 365 days, do you think that he'll have played in the next 365 days if we stay patient, or do you think that this thing is doomed?
From talking to people in his camp, the one thing that I have come to is like the one scenario he'd maybe come back is if they fired Daryl, because I feel like this is like from the start. I think Ben has felt like he's been neglected in a lot of ways by Daryl Morey. Like, look at the previous roster construction in front office; they were, clearly going towards building around Ben Simmons, and because they signed out Horford, they got a big that could fill in for Joel when he was gone with injury, and then could also fit with Ben when Joel is not in the game because he can play off because he can he's a stretch guy. Then Morey comes in, and the entire focus of the team after Ben had an All NBA year, the focus of the team was like, okay, now let's go back to Joel and really build around him and Ben, and basically Joel and the Pips, and Ben's a nice peripheral piece, and I think that just paradigm shift, and I think also maybe a lack of communication and relationship development with Ben Simmons and Daryl Morey had hurt, that relationship from the start and fractured it. And so when Ben hears that they're trying to trade him for Harden immediately, it's kind of like, well, I'm not really wanted here. And he has his struggles in the playoffs, of course. It's a convenient way, time for him to say, well, my teammate and my coach threw me under the bus. I went out.
It's like the total opposite. Like, obviously the The Last Dance documentary. It was last summer's buzz, but it's like total opposite worldview and approach that Scottie Pippen took to that same kind of thing, where they even brought a guy on the team who they knew was there to replace them, and he did totally different. And I can only hear Scottie Pippen's baritone voice in my head saying, the same things that Shaq's saying.
Yeah, it's Shaq's an interesting character. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, so I think like it's a different age, right? It's a different age of the sport. Like player empowerment is at an all-time high, and this is the fans are like, well, like screw Ben Simmons, can't believe he's doing this. Like he's so super soft, he's this, he's that. But also the same people that were huge advocates and proponents of player empowerment. So when you have
Yes.
player empowerment at an all-time high,
Yes.
you're going to have guys feeling audacious and feeling like they can get away with holding out and forcing a trade 1 year into a max contract. I mean, that's
the epitome of it.
Yeah, that's a sign of the times. And that wasn't, not only was that not the case, 20, 30 years ago, they also didn't have contract value that they have now.
Mm-hmm.
The paychecks were back then were not the 8 million on one day that they are today, which is a huge difference.
Yeah. So if let's say on the other end, if the Sixers do decide we're going to make a trade and they have to let go of Thibault or Maxey, if you were Morey, which one would you do?
Thibault. I will say this: I've been impressed with Thibault this year because I think he's done a much better job of recognizing and taking action upon off-ball cutting. Like he's been killing it in the dunker spot, backdoors. He's been great, but it's been 3 years and he's regressed as a shooter since his rookie year. So I mean, the offense really isn't coming along by and large. Last night was a perfect example of his limitations. Like all-world defender should be on Luka Doncic all night long. Doc doesn't bring him in until like late in crunch time because he needed offense, and Thibault is not an offensive player, so he had to keep Danny Green in. That's a problem. Like you literally can't bring the guy in certain spots because he's an offensive liability. So if the question really is, are you going to lean into a defensive world, or are you gonna try to keep your defensive identity alive with this current iteration, or are you gonna really lean into the offense and say, you know what, give them Thibault, we'll keep Maxey, we have a guard of the future if Harden doesn't pan out, we have Harden, and we have Joel. I would definitely keep Maxey. I think there's a world of potential there, and I don't see a lot of evidence that Thibault is going to get that much better.
Fair. So obviously, most people are of the mind right now that Joel Embiid's the number one candidate for the MVP. I haven't really talked or even heard really anybody in the last several weeks even seriously discuss another name, but I'm sure it's out there because Twitter lets people say anything. But if you had to come up with you round out your top four, and if you were able to do it in an order, who would you say the contenders, the honorable mention candidates are?
There you go. Well done. I like that. Well, very good job. So Joel is my leader right now. I think the team is the 5 seed in the East, 2 games out of the 1 seed without Ben Simmons largely because of what Joel has done. He's just been so dominant on both ends, and I can't stand the whole like Jokic is this and that. Okay, but he's not a difference maker on defense. Like there's 2 sides of the floor that matters. Like I don't care what his VORP and his schnorp and his glorp and whatever ridiculous advanced stat you can come up with. Say you 2-way players matter. 2 sides of the floor. So Joel's number 1. I would have had Steph there at number 2, but he's really dropped off since the
big time
year.
Big time.
Yeah. I would say so. Probably Jokic number 2. I guess Giannis number 3, and then you could flip a coin. Steph or Durant, number 4.
I don't have Durant or Steph in mind. Mine are
Ja Morant.
Joel,
Got to be Ja Morant.
Ja Morant. Yes, I mean
Do
you
it.
take him
He's
off of that.
right now. His MVP conversation has taken a big jump the last couple of days. He's very popular. I'll tell you this about Ja, and then I'll let you
No,
finish.
no, no. Go ahead, take it.
Um, I was covering a game Monday, like I cover every game, but Monday I was there. There's no Joel. They're playing Memphis, and at the end of the game, I like looked around and I was like, who do I thank for giving me this credential? Because this guy is unlike anything I've ever seen. John,
Yes,
I mean, he has jetpacks in his shoes. He transcends the spirits that be on the court when he jumps up. I mean, he's skying over everybody. Jumps over the entire crowd, and he's dunking on people. He's laying it up with these crafty, tough finishes through contact. He's shifting on a dime, changing speeds, getting guys off balance, and then throwing it up and then over an outstretched defender. Like incredible finisher. Super strong. And supremely confident in himself. And there's Derrick Rose, there's Allen Iverson, there's Russell Westbrook. I've never seen anything like Ja Morant.
they weren't the true passers. Those are all great players that you name there, but he's also a true passer and is developing into being an offensive threat, a serious offensive threat. And so I kind of see him, and I hate to, obviously, you're exactly right that it really has taken off. Like, I hate to be a prisoner of the moment, but he's looking like, for bearing injury or anything, he's looking like he's developing into a player that may end up being in that conversation for best player in the NBA, which is amazing from the point guard perspective.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that whole team really so I'm probably kind of a boomer in this aspect. I don't like teams that are young being, like acting like they're all that because they haven't proven themselves yet. I don't know why. I just don't
Yeah.
like it.
You haven't earned it yet.
Yeah, it just drives me nuts when I see it. So like when guys are like, when guys are like getting like when you're mean mugging LeBron or you're mean mugging like Embiid or you're mean mugging Giannis, like take a step back.
Yes.
Zaire Williams or whoever, any youngster out there.
It
Like
makes it hard for you to be the underdog and
yes.
to be people to root for you in that way.
Yes. Having said that, I love this Grizzlies group. I think they're so much fun to watch. They have so much swagger for a small market team. They act like they've been there for years, and they're good leaders. Like the other night, I forget who it was, but they were like, "Don't blame that on him. I had 9 turnovers." Like that's accountability. We're together. Like you're not going to throw my brother under the bus. And I think they've grown so fast. I think Taylor Jenkins, the head coach, has done a great job. And they have one of the at worst the 10 best backcourts in the NBA, maybe even top 5.
And they the recent years really convince a team. It gives in football as well as basketball, gives people the idea that all we've got to do is stick together, get an identity, get rather hot towards the end of the season. We could be in the finals. Who would have guessed that the Miami Heat a couple of years ago would have been in the finals, or the Suns? I mean, seriously, before the year, oh, they'll be good. Maybe people will consider they'll be good. I'm kind of, he's not in my top 3, to be honest, because I can't just allow myself to be a prisoner of the moment. But I think also you should honorable mention DeMar DeRozan, the way that team has really
Yeah,
has accepted.
people were very like low on that team, and I'm thinking like, do we not remember DeMar DeRozan? Like this is like 2 or 3 years ago removed. Like he's not old. Isn't that old. He has a mid-range game that's going to be there forever. He was a stud in Toronto. And I think there's like I believe, like this is my own theory, but there's certain like when you're saying like this guy was a terrible defender on a bad team, I think when you put a bad defender on a pretty good team, they tend to elevate their defense because they feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's a tangible difference in what this team can do if I
Yep.
dedicate myself on
Yep.
defense.
Yep.
as opposed to like a team that's 20 games under 500. Like what is it? Like what good is it going to do if I decide to lock in for this one possession? Like, like
Yeah.
so I think when you see that your team has a high ceiling, you say maybe I can help us get to the next level if I really focus in on my off ball or I really dig in and get down in a stance on ball. And then the Bulls they haven't been a great defense, but they've been better than anybody expected them to be.
I also want to give some love to Giannis because obviously his team isn't playing as well and he set such a high bar for himself. But if you just straight up look at the numbers and watch him play, just eye test or look at the stats, they're the same stats as Joel has, if
Yeah,
not better.
by and large, yeah, probably even a little bit better. Yeah, he's just a freak. He's just he's literally the freak. I mean, I I don't even know like how to quantify Giannis.
Yes.
I will say like the raw emotion he showed winning that championship last year after he won, you could see the years of buildup and the years of disappointment in his that had just been vindicated in his eyes when they won that title. And it was like such a coming of age moment for him to make those like 18 to 20 free throws in game 6 after he'd struggled all year long. Just like, this is my moment. You're not going to deny me of that. And I think that's a great story.
Unbelievable performances. I mean, kind of like up there with the finals that LeBron had a few years back, the one that they lost where he was like, I think he dropped 38 a game that finals.
It was one of the many where they were like, should James win or should LeBron win MVP despite losing the series? And you're like, I don't know, like, do you think he really cares about winning the MVP and he doesn't win the series? Like, come on.
Do you think we'll ever see that? Is that possible in today's NBA ever again?
What, winning the MVP?
Yeah, despite losing.
I have no idea. I would say
you'd have to drop like 55 a game or something.
Well,
have to go to like 7 games.
But so like, here's my thing. Wouldn't valuable mean that you are driving your team to victory? So like it's like if the most valuable player is going to be the guy that's elevating his team to win the series. And so I think in most cases it's going to be the guy on a winning team. Like, I think there was a year where Iguodala won the MVP,
yes,
sure, but he was not even close to the best player in that series. He just did the things that the Golden State Warriors needed to persevere and get over the top.
Yeah. So basically the answer is no. Somebody would have to be so overwhelmingly good, like 75 a game, and the rest of the team just completely stink. It just nothing.
Like 1-on-5, like basically 1-on-5.
Okay. So speaking of LeBron, do you think he'll? The news has been about his interest in the Lakers are not playing well. Breaking news: the Lakers are not playing so well this year. But the new Lakers news is that he hopes to play long enough to play with his son. Do you think that is just a hope in his mind, or do you really you think that he sees that as an expectation?
Expectation for sure. I mean, I think he invests enough in his body to be playing for a long time. I think you're probably going to see him play fewer and fewer regular season games as time goes on. But I mean, listen, if Bronny gets drafted by like the Kings, LeBron signing a 1-year deal with the Kings is like, all right, take me home, fellas. Let's get this done.
So he's gonna time it up, and he's out. Like, if the Lakers are not able to get Bronny, LeBron's retiring in another jersey, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, like he's gonna sign and say, I'll give you one of those iconic highlight dunks. You can get all your Kodak moments there. I'll even smile for it too. And then after that, I'm out. Like one picture with me and Bronny, and I'm retiring. It's over.
So you don't even think he would really play, or you think?
I think it would be like he would probably not have much value to a team. Like, maybe he plays for the sake of having the video clips of LeBron playing in my uniform, but I think beyond, like I don't think I don't know that it'd be a lot of value to a team if he's 41 and he can't really play anymore. But like, I think the one thing that's interesting is we're already all assuming that Bronny's going to be an NBA player. Like,
Yes,
like,
right,
let
right.
the kid breathe. Let the kid play. Don't put like insane expectations on him. Let him make his mistakes and play and learn the game and play it the right way. Instead of saying like, well, when you get drafted 6 years from now, like, no, he's a kid. Let him be a kid.
It's hard to even fathom this, but basically, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is exactly right. I never thought that a player could come in with as much expectation and Mount Everest on their shoulders, but they're doing that now to Brian. I didn't think that would be able to be surmounted, but by doing that, like you're playing now to be able to play in the NBA with your dad, who's in the conversation to be the best player of all time. It's just tough. It's probably tough being that kid. Hopefully, he's got the mental fortitude to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about him, other than being LeBron James' son, is that you've lived in this spotlight most of your life. Like you've had the press in your face most of your life. You've been a celebrity since basically you were born. You're not. This is not going to be this world-changing, overwhelming experience when you take the jump. I mean, my God, like right now he already has like millions of followers on Instagram, and he's played high school basketball at best.
Yeah. So I know you're an NBA guy, but obviously people Super Bowl's coming up. So what are your thoughts on because you live in the Delaware Valley, what are your thoughts on the Eagles moving forward with Jalen Hurts, or what are your thoughts on Jalen Hurts?
So I think everyone needs to give the kid a break. There's always a need to put like a quarterback controversy in the city. Like this is basically his rookie year because he takes over for Carson, 3/4 of the way through last year. So he's learning a lot of things on the fly this year. There are certainly issues, namely arm strength, his ability to extend play with, but by seeing secondary reads and third reads and whatnot. But he has the legs for it. He seems like he's always in the right frame of mind, and he's a good leader. And I think those are all intangible qualities that maybe buy you some extra time because that means that you're not afraid. You'll put in the work, and if he can throw the long ball and he's accurate, that's the only thing left really for him. So I think time will tell. I also think it would help him if maybe his receivers didn't drop balls that were in their hands all the time. Looking at you, Mr. Rager and Mr. Arcega-Whiteside.
Talk about an albatross. You used that word earlier. I mean, you're going into the game. Jalen has to be a student of the game and to be wise and know what your players' abilities are. And every week in the game plan, Sirianni's featuring Jalen Rager.
Yeah.
And you're expecting him to make plays. Even you've got J-Jaw on the field. Obviously, he's a good blocker, right? Maybe move him to tight end, but the hands are not there. So pretty much defenses, they could move all of their players. They could put their worst corner on J-Jaw because they know all he's going to do is maybe catch an 8-yard stop route or he's going to block them.
Yeah. And then let's put it this way. You're likely to get more production from Rager on Twitter than you are on the field.
That's the truth. Now, Quez Watkins, I like Quez Watkins.
I love Quez Watkins. I think he's awesome. He
made
that kid made some unbelievable catches this year. Like massive skill, like under duress, no space to work, just makes these unbelievable catches. Like those are the catches that maybe he's not a star, who knows, but that's a guy who can be in number 2, number 3.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. I would, if you have Quez Watkins at number 3, a true number 3, he played number 3 this year, but he was the second best. If Quez Watkins your third best wide receiver, you got a really good wide receiver core with Goddard. They've been talking about getting Ridley. I love that idea. Or somebody. This offseason, they've got to clear the decks. I'm fine. Just get everybody out of town. I like Greg Ward. He's okay. get everybody out of town, and build around Quez Watkins and Devontae Smith.
From what we've seen, like with the Rager experience and Northego Whiteside experience, hell, bring back Nelson Aguilar for all I care. like, it can't get much worse than what they've gotten since Aguilar. So
that I wouldn't mind it because my last guest OJ Spivey from Philly Tribune was gave me a little bit of perspective, and I always remember it because obviously I watch the games here and then just rewatch it to relive some good memories. But Nelson Aguilar, we don't win the Super Bowl without Nelson Aguilar. That year there were a lot of good plays and catches that he made, and so it wasn't all bad.
No, it wasn't. He just missed a lot of the basic ones, which kind of stick out. But yeah, he had an incredible catch in that run a couple of years ago. I also think that, like, knowing what we know about Wentz, maybe receivers elevate their games when they play for a quarterback that isn't Carson Wentz because they don't like Carson Wentz.
It's just obviously you hate to root against people because there are actually like real humans with real feelings on the other side of this. But the way that Carson he got traded, he got his way, he got out of town. The reason he left is because he wanted to be reassured that there was no scenario under which he could lose the job. And that's not how life works.
Yeah.
And so he gets his way, he gets out of town, and then tries to like throw Philly under the bus, send veiled shots at the city. So to watch him fail so spectacularly against the Jaguars was pretty nice.
If there's one thing I've learned from the past year of Philadelphia sports, just observing the fans, few things feel as good as vindication. And so when they see like this guy, like, oh my God, he puked against the Jaguars and like they missed the playoffs. Like they were like they lost their first, they were like 1-4 and they were like 7, whatever, I forget. But they were basically in good position all season long. And then he coughs it up to the Jaguars and they lose and they're not out of the playoffs. And now all the columnists in Indiana are like, this guy can't play, not the quarterback of the future. That gives them vindication because they feel like it wasn't us, buddy. It was you. That was the problem.
Covering the birds this season, even until then, you still had people saying that the Eagles made the wrong move, that they should have went forward with Carson Wentz. They should have gave him. I mean, I can't believe that people pretend as though the Eagles did not trade their Super Bowl MVP quarterback for the same reason that he was mad about them getting Jalen Hurts, because he wanted the assurance, even after we played him as soon as he was healthy, after he was coming back from an ACL.
Yeah. There's definitely a political joke in there about the Wentz supporters, but I'm not going to take it there.
Please don't. It's a safe space for people. They can, if you would like to hear, my thoughts on these kind of things, it's right on the screen.
There you go. Yeah. You can always tell when you get the profile. It's always a couple of themes there that you can spot.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, listen, I think like leadership in sports is it's something that I realize is probably more important than I gave it credit for previously. And I think Jalen Hurts, by all accounts, is a great leader. And I think what that means is his players want to play for him, whereas they didn't want to play for Wentz. And when you have guys who want to fight with you and fight for you, that's going to elevate your entire team. And so all he has to do now is put in the work, work on that accuracy, work on that arm, work on extending plays with those additional reads. And there's a chance he could be the guy of the future. But if not, well, I don't really know, because we know this GM doesn't really know how to draft. So it's kind of like, well, we don't know where to go now.
But he's always looking. He is always looking for the next person. So it'll be somebody else. And I don't exactly mind it that they do value the backup quarterback position. So it's better than the opposite.
For sure.
Who do you think wins the Super Bowl next week? I always hate this week between, but
I forgot that was the thing. I thought it was tomorrow. I was very upset. I have a lot of admiration for Matt Stafford. I'm very happy he's in this spot because of what he put up with in Detroit. Also, his wife had a brain tumor, overcame that. So I think that would be great for that family. I think the Rams are going to win it. I think he's a much better quarterback than Jared Goff, and they have a pretty good receiver core and a lot of talent there. I think it'll be the Rams.
I agree, and I think Aaron Donald's going to be the MVP. I think I think he's the best. When you watch him, I'm a big eye test person. I like stats. I always refer to the stats, but people who listen know that I'm big on the eye test and just like what you see when you watch the game, because the players respond in their body language and they know, you can see how the coordinators are scheming it up. Aaron Donald's the best football player in the NFL, and he knows that history might not record him that way if he doesn't get himself a ring. He wants to be considered like a Reggie White, the way that people see that, and these great all-time, dynamic shifting defensive players. He has to have a game where he doesn't let Stafford take the MVP. He's in that category where he needs to be one of the, talked about as one of the top 10, 15 defensive players ever. I think it's got to be Aaron Donald.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, the Bengals are a lot like the Grizzlies. Like,
yeah,
extremely like
there they are.
Themselves.
They might end up in the final. The Grizzlies might end up in the finals too.
I would love that. That would be a really fun finals. I would certainly enjoy that.
Absolutely. Well, Austin, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. We've been trying to work this out. You've been extremely flexible with all that. Tell the people where they can follow along and show you some support and listen in for you, man.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for having me on. You can find me on Twitter at NBA Krell. It's right on the screen there. That's my name. I cover the Sixers daily. I cover the NBA at large for the USA Today. So a podcast of my own called The Feed to Embiid, which was, in hindsight, was probably my best name. Best thing I've ever had. My best idea ever. But you can definitely find me there. I pod every week about the team, obviously. But yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you for coming on, and be hollering at you soon, man. Take care.
No problem, Matt. Thanks for having me.